Okay, pelvic floor exercise technique. Now this is really important and it's probably one of the most clicked on videos on my website. Your pelvic floor exercise technique is essential, and there's some visual cues that I have found so useful in clinic that I thought I would share them with you on this website. So when we're talking about the pelvic floor, we're literally talking about the floor to your pelvis. So it's the underneath part of your pelvis. Now, when you're squeezing your pelvic floor, ideally it should only be the pelvic floor that's actually moving. So there are some cheating muscles that you want to avoid. And in the early stages of training, to isolate the pelvic floor and to get the pelvic floor moving on its own, it's really important to get into the easiest position for you. And I would say in the early stages, the easiest position for you to squeeze your pelvic floor in is lying on your back with your knees bent. Now, if you find that your pelvic floor is weak even in this position, you could pop some cushions underneath your buttocks. And in that position there, you've got gravity actually pulling down towards your chest. And you might find your pelvic floor works a little bit easier with gravity helping you along. So it's either gravity neutral or gravity assisted in your pelvic floor training. So if you want to, you can pause this video and get into position and I'll talk you through some exercises. Okay, so when you're squeezing your pelvic floor muscles, you always want to start at the back and work to the front. A lot of people, especially those with bladder problems, will try and squeeze just the front bit around the front of the pelvic floor, the front where the bladder is. So that's where they feel the symptoms and that's where they feel like they need to target the muscle squeeze. And that's understandable, that's fair enough. But actually what you want to try and do is start from the back passage and work your way forwards. And the best visual cue that I have to give you today is the idea and the image of having a marble in your back passage. Now obviously I'm not saying to use a marble in your back passage, that's definitely not what I'm expecting. But just use that visual cue, that idea of a marble in your back passage. Now I want you to think of your back passage a circular muscle. Okay, so it's a circular muscle, and when it tightens like purse strings. So it pulls the purse strings together. And as the purse strings come together, you'll be gripping hold of that imaginary marble. And I want you to grip and pull upwards inside of you. So the image is pulling the marble up inside of you. Now it doesn't end there, it's not just that straight up movement. You want to bring the movement forwards towards your pubic bone. And the way that you do that is in your imagination, you've pulled the marble up inside of you, and then you want to try and pop it on top of your pubic bone. So you pull the marble up and forwards. And that will give you a really good up and forwards technique. And that will engage all of your pelvic floor muscles rather than just the small area at the front around the bladder. Another visual cue that will be really useful for you is to imagine that with your vaginal entrance you are trying to pull a tissue out of the box. So you're using your vaginal entrance to pinch the tissue and lift. That's a really good way to get the surface layer of pelvic floor muscles working. So if you think of squeezing the marble and putting the marble on top of the pubic bone, you've then got the tissue idea, and you can do them separately. Sometimes in the early stages of training it's important to do that separately because it can be quite difficult to put the both together. But once they feel easy in separate techniques, then you can start putting it together. So you could lift the marble, and as you're pulling the marble forwards to put it onto your pubic bone, you can try and pinch the tissue out of the box. So that's a really handy technique in how to activate your pelvic floor muscles. The easiest position to do your pelvic floor exercise squeezes is lying down. So lying on your back, on your side, on your front. I tend to find lying on my back a lot easier, but it depends on what's comfortable for you. If you want to make it easier again, then you could pop some pillows and cushions underneath your buttocks so that your buttocks are higher than your shoulders. But if you want more of a challenge, then you can try sitting or standing or even while you're moving. Have a go at those pelvic floor squeezes and see how you get on. If you're struggling and you feel that you can't feel any movement, or you just feel the cheating muscles of your buttocks, your abs, you're holding your breath, your eyebrows are going, whatever it might be that makes you think I'm not quite doing it right and it just doesn't feel like it should feel, then obviously give me a shout, send me an email, book an appointment, whether that's virtual or in clinic, or think about purchasing the Reconnect courses. Those courses are designed to reconnect you with your body so that you can activate those long lost muscles, as it were.